Hello everyone and welcome to another Conan Exiles lore video. If you haven't already, check out my previous video of Hanuman. In this video we're going to look at the Hyborians, who they were, what they did, and what happened to them in the end. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So the Hyborian race encompassed the descendants of a barbarian tribe who worshipped Bori, a great chieftain elevated to godhood through legend. They came from the north thousands of years ago and destroyed the ancient empire of Acheron. The ancestors of the Hyborians are described as tawny-haired and grey-eyed, though intermingling with other races has diversified their appearance. So if you're looking to do a role-playing build based on the Hyborians, you can't be faulted for not sticking strictly to grey eyes and tawny hair. When the Great Cataclysm brought an end to the Thurian Age, somewhere between 35,000 and 40,000 BC, entire nations were blotted out. Lemuria and Atlantis and the Pictish Islands were lifted from the oceans to form the mountain peaks of the new continents. Sections of the Thurian continent sank under the waves, forming great inland lakes and seas. Great earthquakes and volcanoes ground to dust the shining cities of these empires. These events set the stage for the rise of the different races as we see them in Conan Exiles. About 500 years after the Great Cataclysm, a tribe of people were slowly coming into existence in the far north, where they fled to escape the destruction. Described as barely human savages, these primitive humans found the icy countries of the far north inhabited by a species of snow apes. They fought these snow apes and drove them beyond the Arctic Circle, where they believed them to perish. The primitive tribe now began to adapt to their new environment. A second, lesser cataclysm brought further destruction to the world and completed the annihilation of the barbarian tribes. Despite this new cataclysm, the tribe in the far north is still growing and has now become known as the Hyborians, or Hybori. 1,500 years of surviving in the hostile snow country has forged them into a vigorous and warlike race, and it is around this time that they began slowly pushing southward. News came to the north around this time that the northern icy wastes were inhabited by the descendants of the snow apes that the Hyborians' ancestors had driven out of the land. A small band of warriors went to exterminate the snow apes of the icy waste but were never seen again. Meanwhile, the rest of the Hyborians continued southward. It has now been 1,500 years after the Lesser Cataclysm. The still purebred Hyborians have moved toward the south and the west, destroying and conquering many tribes on the way. The kingdom of Hyperborea, the first of the Hyborian kingdoms, started as a crude fortress of heaped boulders, naked stone dwellings, and giant walls. Soon after this, the Hyborians founded the kingdom of Koth on the borders of Shem. The first kingdom of Hyboria is now overthrown by another tribe who keeps the kingdom's old name. A roving tribe of Hyborians conquer the dwellers of the fertile valley of Zing, a mixed race of Picts and the original dwellers of that valley. The Hyborians interbreed with this conquered tribe and will eventually give rise to the kingdom of Zingara. Just 500 years later, the kingdoms of the Hyborians dominate the Western world and include Aquilonia, Nemedia, Brythunia, Hyperborea, Koth, Ophir, Argos, Corinthia, and the Border Kingdom. In another 500 years, the Hyborians are the supreme civilization in the Western world, with the kingdom of Aquilonia as their most powerful. In the far north, however, the Nordheimer tribe successfully drive the remaining Hyborians out of the snow countries, all except for Hyperborea. By this time, the Hyborians no longer resemble their tawny-haired, grey-eyed ancestors due to their interbreeding with other races. Somewhere around 9,500 BC, the Aquilonian kingdom became greedy. The kings of Aquilonia annexed Zingara, Argos, Ophir, and the western cities of Shem. Koth and Carinthia were forced to pay tribute to Aquilonia and lend aid in its wars. Numidia resisted Aquilonia and drew Brythunia, Zamora, and secretly Koth into an alliance against them. Before the two armies could go to war, riders from Turan, reinforced by Hyrcanian adventurers, swept over Zamora and fought the Aquilonians in the plains of Brythunia. The Aquilonians were victorious, but the Numidian alliance was broken. Aquilonia now held dominion over all. Meanwhile, the Pictish tribes in the west grew in power, and a Numidian priest became determined to introduce them to the worship of Mitra. Aros, the priest of Mitra, was fortunate enough to meet with a reasonable Pictish chief named Grom. Grom allowed Aros to live among his tribe and preach his religion unmolested. The Picts slowly began to pay attention to the words of Aros, but not for his worship. They became very interested in the material wealth of the Hyborian kingdoms. Before long, Aros, at Grom's request, conducted him and some of his warriors into the kingdoms of Hyboria, where they marveled at the splendor. Soon, the borders of Hyboria were open to the Picts and they could come and go as they pleased. Many of the Pictish warriors joined the armies of Hyboria as mercenaries, learning the arts of civilized warfare while in their ranks. Meanwhile, Grom's tribe learned from Aros how to mine the iron ores in their lands and smith the iron into weapons. With their new weapons, the tribe of Grom dominated the other Pictish tribes and started to set their sights on the wealth of the Hyborian kingdoms. Aros, seeing his mistake, tried to undo it, but was killed by a drunken Pict. Soon, the Picts started a war with the Bessonian frontiers, which lay between them and the Hyborian kingdoms. The Bessonian frontiers kept them at bay for some time. But the Aquilonians grew ever more powerful and proud. They began to mistreat their subjected peoples, which stirred the flames of rebellion amongst them. Finally, Aquilonia committed to conquering Numidia, which had never fully defeated. On their way to war with Numidia, the Bessonian mercenaries abandoned the Aquilonian army to defend their homes against the Pictish raiders. This left the Aquilonian army weak and led to their defeat against the Numidians. Seeking to punish the Bessonians for their abandonment, the Aquilonians, through trickery, murdered the Bessonian generals and attacked the unsuspecting Bessonian people, ravaging the marches. With the Bessonians out of the way, the Picts were free to enter the kingdoms of Hyboria unhindered. The Picts swarmed into Aquilonia, plundering as they went before the Aquilonian armies could return from their war in the east. Seeing their chance, Zingara, Carinthia, and Shem freed themselves from the bonds of Aquilonia. Whole regiments of mercenaries mutinied and marched back to their homes. With no Aquilonian armies to stop them, the Hyrcanians and Turanians banded together and swept over what remained of the Hyborian kingdoms, namely Zamara, Brythunia, Hyperborea, and Carinthia. And just like that, the kingdoms of Hyboria were brought to an end. What made the Hyborians so strong was their ability to adapt, their lust for conquest, and their willingness to assimilate other peoples into their civilization, adopting useful customs and wisdoms. But it was this very fighting spirit and lust for conquest that brought their end through pride and greed. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned something new and interesting. If you want to do some further reading, you can go look up The Hyborian Age by Robert E. Howard, where I got most of the information for this video. But for now, if you have any comments or suggestions on future videos, or maybe you know something that I did not touch on in this video, let me know in the comment section and I'll see you guys next time.